Hello, welcome to Unplug, where we unplug and free the minds of the people that have been enslaved and indoctrinated by the network marketing / MLM multi-level marketing matrix. We speak out against the lies and the fallacies that are done by this establishment, the multi-level marketing industry, and particularly the Amway business and the LTD tools business. I'm your host, Musumhi, and this is episode 2, where I'm sharing my whole story. Granted, I was in Amway for about 6 years, so it's kind of a long story, but I feel like there's value in sharing my whole story in detail of what happened. I'm a melancholy. Basically, that means you're very, very detailed and analytical and an introvert. So I say that because I guess the reason why I'm so detailed in my story and why I remember so much is because naturally I can remember things very, very well in a detailed manner. Even when I'm not trying to, I can still remember things in a very detailed manner where I can imagine things. Where if things that happened in my past, I can imagine them in my mind and play them out in my mind as if they're happening for the first time. That's how detailed I am. So, with that being said, we'll continue with my story. So, continuing on, I go to my first conference in April of 2016. It's called Spring Forward. It is ran by Beth Markowitz, Double Diamonds. And Double Diamonds are people that have 12 platinum legs or 12 partnerships that have reached the 7,500 PV level in Amway. I kind of explained all that a little bit in my first episode. I might have done well or not well with it, but yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. But they're Double Diamonds. People that have been in Amway kind of know what I'm talking about anyway, but they're Double Diamonds, Joy Meredith Markowitz, and I go to my first conference and I'm blown away. It's amazing, and I've never heard anyone talk like that before in my life, and it was just, on stage, because they have so many speakers, and mind you, they only allow people that have made 6 figures or more speak on stage. And those speakers, like I said, not every talk, but most talks are recorded on stage, and those are the talks that are sold through the LTD media app as audios or podcast episodes. That's how that works. Not every talk is like that, but some talks are recorded and then distributed and sold. So I got my first conference, Spring Forward. I'm blown away. It was in Peoria, Illinois. I remember we traveled down there in a minivan. It was Dana Global, and it was me and 4 other people. Dana Global at that time had 6 legs. I was one of them, and I think he was like either 2,500 or 1,500 PV at that time. And he was growing, right? So he had 6 legs. Going to that conference, I was one of them, and he had us 5 at UNI campus, and then another one in Fort Madison, Iowa. But total 6 legs, which is legs is partnerships or people that you recruit in your business. That's what I mean by legs. So Daniel had 6 legs, going to that first conference, my first conference. And the ones that were at UNI, we went down with a minivan to Peoria, Illinois. The one that was in Fort Madison, Iowa, drove himself down to Peoria, Illinois, and it was a good time. And then Sunday happened that weekend, and Sunday morning they always have like a church service, non-denominational or whatever, and it's optional. And I was blown away by that, and and then I remember after that first conference, I was fired up, and the day afterwards, which was a Monday, right? So it took place on a weekend in April 2016. The day afterwards, on Monday, that's where we have our local info sessions in Waterloo, right? So we had one there that Monday after the conference, my first conference, and our leader at that time, we call him Upline Platinum. Upline is people that are above you, leadership-wise or pin level-wise, and pin level is like level in Amway. So he was a level above us in Amway. He was a platinum, and that's similar to PV, and he's done that at least 12 months in a row. So he's like a Q-top platinum, and his name is Billy Hubert. And he came down because he's actually from Fort Madison, Iowa, and so is Dan Goebel. They're both from Fort Madison, Iowa, and they actually met in Fort Madison, Iowa, and that's how Daniel got an Amway before I did. So anyway, Billy Hubert goes to Cedar Falls, Iowa, or to Waterloo, Iowa, to our meeting, and he comes to visit us, and he comes to the info session and sees the board plan there and stays for training. And then after that, we're kind of like all in a group huddle in the hotel, the Fairfield Inn. Not everyone in the meeting, just Daniel, Six Legs, and Billy. Just privately all huddled together in the hotel. And Billy starts kind of hammering at me specifically in front of everybody and saying, I don't have my Ditto in, and I don't have my message app, and all this stuff about it's good to be fired up about this conference that we just had, but hey, you gotta take it seriously. And I was kind of confused because I didn't know what Ditto was, and I didn't know that we were required to use our LTD message app frequently. So that night, I get explained what Ditto was, and I get explained I get explained how to use the LTD tools business, because it was actually that conference, Spring Forward, when I learned what LTD was, the tools business, where we buy books, audios, and have that app. But before that, I wasn't really explained what LTD was until then, at that conference, because they would say this conference is an LTD meeting conference, so it was a little different back then with this old interview process or recruiting process back then. So basically how it worked was with this old process, basically you sign people up like myself, and after like a little while, that's when you start laying down expectations, but you do that after they get signed up, not before. That was how it worked back then. It's changed now. It's less shady now, but it's still a shady process, and we'll get to the new process for recruiting and interviewing later. But this is how I got in, honest truth. So this night after my first conference is when I got laid down the expectations of what was required of me. And Ditto is basically a thing that you can set up where You can choose any date of the month where you can have like a reoccurring transaction go through your debit card or your credit card that you put on file to have products get shipped to you, to buy products. So like kind of like, let's just like maybe use like today's example where like, you know, some people, they go to a grocery store. I guess a lot of them order their grocery stores today online. So like I guess some people today monthly have their local supermarket. They probably have like an account where on their debit card or on their personal credit card, they have like a recurring payment of whatever stuff they buy per month. So if they get greens, if they get fruit, you know, from a certain supermarket every month, let's just say the 15th of the month, it's like a recurring payment, subscription, if you will. That's what Ditto is with Amway. It's a way where like you can have a set date on when products are purchased, where you can purchase products automatically. So instead of actively going to a website every single month to pick a product, you can always have that product automatically get picked for you per month, if that makes sense. That's what Ditto is. And they wanted it first of the month, every month, just so then I can reach my PV level first every month. And that helps the upline, the people above me, know what level I'm at and what level they're at in total, so they can kind of continue building on their business throughout the rest of the month. So I was told to have a Ditto first of the month, you know, at least 100 PV. And then LTD side, I was told that every single night I need to go on the LTD messaging app, which I mentioned in the first episode, and kind of explain what that was. I'm required to text my upline through a typed message every night of the activity I did towards building my personal Amway business, so-called. And different teams in LTD require different things. So like I know some people, it was once a week, but they had to explain everything that they did that whole week. Or it could be just, you know, every single night before you go to bed, share what you did that day. So I got the expectations of I need to send an LTD message app to my upline every single night, and I need to have my Ditto order of products from my Amway website the first of every month. That was what I was told, and you know, I was told after I signed up. So yeah. But I didn't really think anything of it. I was just like, okay, let me do it. You know, and I actually felt bad for not doing these things. But looking back at it now, like, it was shady because you didn't even tell me that you wanted this from me. But granted, I was 19 at the time, freshman in college at UNI, University of Northern Iowa. So whatever. Anyway, so yeah, I get laid down expectations. And then, you know, I continue to build my business from that point on. And it was like a honeymoon phase for a while. Just because it was me and Daniel's other 4 legs that went to UNI. Granted, all 5 of his legs went to UNI, and then it was Daniel. And then his 6th leg was in Fort Madison, Iowa. So it was like, you know, just all 6 of us at UNI, like a gang, you know, the Amway gang or the Amway group, you know, and I felt included, and it was nice, and it was like we were the Avengers, but just in Amway. That's what it felt like. It was like 5 guys, including Daniel, and then 1 female. And so that was the dynamic there. We were all friends, tight, cool. It was nice. And let's see, I went back home that summer 2016 at my first conference, and then we had a summer conference. I think it was called Ignite, if I remember speaking. And that conference was a summer conference. That one was ran by a diamond named Mike Wechter and Janet Wechter. And that's where you have 6 platinum legs. And they're like in Joe and Mary Beth Markowitz's team. So they're like below Joe and Mary Beth, but they're on his team. They're on Joe and Mary Beth's team. So that was my first summer conference. That's conference number 2. And then I was back in Ames at this point. I went back home for the summer, Ames, Iowa. And then let's see, I'm back at school, UNI, August, year number 2 for college. And let's see, then this is the 3rd conference of the year, which is Summit. And that's where it's like the whole LTD team meets. So with these 4 conferences, there's a winter conference. It's usually in January. There's a spring conference. It's usually in March, April. The winter conference is like a little smaller. It's an LTD meeting, but it's a part of LTD, but it's a smaller section of LTD where it's pinned down to your local diamond, or I guess the closest diamond that you have. Spring forward, that's ran by our double diamond, Jeremy Beth Markowitz. Spring conference, summer conference is the small diamond conference, and then there's a fall leadership that's ran by an emerald or a diamond, smaller meeting, but it's still all LTD, but it's just a smaller section of LTD, just with whatever team that you're a part of. And the whole LTD team across the U.S. meets at this conference in September every year, or October, and it's called Summit. Other teams that are part of other tools businesses, like let's just say Worldwide Dream Builders, they call it FED, Free Enterprise Day. This is the LTD Free Enterprise Day, but they just call it Summit. It's the same thing. Summit is where new diamonds are recognized, which is like a big dramatic thing where they walk down an aisle, red carpet, go to the stage in front of everybody, 1,000 people, and they get a diamond ring, the men do, and it's a big thing. And like I said again, diamond is where you have 6 platinum legs, 6 partnerships through Amway. So anyway, I go back to school for my second year. I'm a sophomore at this point, August 2016, and then September 2016 is Summit, and then let me see if I'm explaining everything. I'll mention this to people that have been in Worldwide Dream Builders. Let's see, in my process, and they still do this even with the new process, but in my process, they gave me a CD. It was called Business of the 21st Century. So I'm going back a few months back in March. And this one was done by, I believe, a crown. It's basically it's like a quadruple diamond, I think, where you have like multiple platinum legs. I forgot the number, but it was done by a crown named Greg Duncan. It's a pretty famous audio in the Worldwide Dream Builders tool business, but LTD also has that audio too, and they actually sell that too. So I got that CD back when I first was getting in the process, or I guess getting interviewed in the interview process for getting into Amway back in March 2016. But I just wanted to mention that. But back to Summit of September 2016, our guest speaker for that conference, because we didn't have any new diamonds at that point, our guest speaker, from what I remember, was, if I remember correctly, 2016. I'm trying to see, 2016. I think I'm right. Yeah, it was Greg Duncan. Actually, he came to our FED, or we call it Summit of 2016. Greg and Larry Duncan, and they're from the Worldwide Dream Builders team, which is the Worldwide Dream Builders tools business, a different tools business, but it's all linked to Amway. I just want to mention that for people that have been in Worldwide, that some of your leaders would come down to some of our conferences too. Also, actually, in our LTD media app, there's a feature where you can have a subscription to listen to a monthly John Maxwell audio, and there'll be like a new leadership audio every single month that he'll record for LTD. I think it was called Maximize Your Leadership feature on the LTD media app, if I remembered. And John Maxwell was partnered with us too on LTD. He wasn't just partnered up with Worldwide, he was also partnered with LTD too. So yeah. But anyway, and actually he's has spoken at some of the LTD conferences there too. Actually, I wasn't there for it, but he has been there, because I remember buying some audios from the LTD media app, and there was some podcast episodes of which is basically recordings of conferences of speakers, and he was a speaker at a conference in LTD somewhere. So anyway, but back to the story. I go to Summit 2016, blown away by seeing all those diamonds speak. We didn't have any new diamonds that year, but Greg and Larry Duncan came and spoke. Let's see. Oh yeah, I should probably go back. So how I got in was through an old way of doing things, where you're shown the compensation plan of Amway, and you're known that it is Amway from day one through either a laptop or an iPad. And then if you get launched, you're laid down expectations later after you sign up. And that was the old process. And actually, pretty quickly, it was roughly, I think, April, May, so about, let's see, 2 to 3 months after I got recruited. So I got recruited in February of 2016, launched March 2016, right? So April, May 2016, actually, I'm going back a little bit, sorry, that's when we started the new process. And it's pretty significant to mention this, because I was old process, where an old way of doing things that they used to do to recruit people, and then they moved into a new way of how to recruit people, which is the new process. So I got to see both perspectives. So it was around April, May when they wanted to change to the new process, the new vetting process, and people that are in Amway or have been in Amway know what I'm talking about. So the story of how we got the process, I later found this out later, but I'll mention this now. An Emerald at the time, in 2016, he's a diamond now, but an Emerald at the time, Paul Kopecki, was at a trip, an Amway, qualifying trip. I think it was Q12 maybe, but at this trip he met Pete Hirschelman. I believe it was Pete. Let me see. Yeah, it was Pete Hirschelman. And Paul's a very huge sanguine, so he just kept asking a lot of questions and talking to him, and eventually Pete kind of spoke out things about his process that he's doing, and I should probably explain. Pete Hershelman is a diamond, but he's a part of a different tools business called the Worldwide Gym Tools Business, and their tools business, they have a different way of recruiting people, a vetting process, and that's how we got the process for LTD. It was Paul Kopecki. He talked to Pete. Pete mentioned about the process, and then that's how Paul knew about the process. And then he spoke to my upline emerald called Kevin Schweers. Now he's a diamond too, but Kevin's a diamond now, but back then he was an emerald. And he talked to Kevin about it. He talked to Brent about that. Brent and Brenda Harris are emeralds in the business back then. Now the diamonds too. So I should probably explain. Brent and Brenda Harris were emeralds at that time, and they had two separate platinum and above legs. Two of them were Paul Kopecki and his wife Morgan Kopecki, and then the other one was Kevin and Miller Schweers. And those two couples were emeralds. And then at that time, he actually had, I think, four platinum legs, but he was an emerald. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I know I am to people that have been in Amway. But anyway, now today, Brett and Brenda Harris and Paul and Mark Kopecki and Kevin Mia Schweers are diamonds, but back then they're all emeralds, all of them. So anyway, so Paul basically speaks this out to the local, you can say, Iowa team, which was basically Brett and Brenda Harris's team. And I was a part of Kevin and Amelia's team. So Kevin and Amelia learned this from Paul, actually. And then it slowly started to infiltrate throughout LTD. I'm not sure how it got through the rest of LTD, but I know how it locally got to my local area. It was through Paul Kopecki, basically. And then my upline emerald at the time, Kevin and Amelia Schweers, hears about this. And then shortly after that, my sponsor named Daniel Gobel earned a lunch with Kevin and Amelia, or just Kevin actually, just to hang out, ask questions, whatever. He earned his time to eat lunch with him, which is a pretty big deal, in that world. He's an emerald, he wants to eat lunch with you. Wow, right? So, and Kevin starts talking about this new process, and he actually encourages Daniel to try it. And so actually I believe that me and Daniel were the first ones in Kevin and Mia Schweer's team to do the new process, because Kevin didn't mention this to anyone else except Daniel. So actually, when he encouraged my sponsor Daniel to try this new process, I was actually the next meeting in his calendar. Of recruiting people or vetting people, whatever you want to call it. I was the next meeting in Daniel's calendar, and so instead of just showing the plan on his iPad or a laptop, we decided to do this new process. And he was kind of iffy about it. So was I, just because, especially if we try and recruit a college student, who's going to want to read a book first before knowing what they're getting into, So anyway, but we were the first ones to do the new process, this new vetting process, this new and improved vetting process. And it actually went well with this prospect. This prospect didn't get in to my business, but it was a good vetting process, and it went smoothly, actually. And then slowly Kevin started to share this with the rest of his team, and then it eventually grew to the point where by September 2016, everyone on Kevin's team is doing this process. And most people throughout LTD are doing this process. Not everyone, but most people throughout the whole LTD system. Some today, I think, do the old process, but for the most part, it's spread out to LTD. And it was because of that one meeting with Paul Kovecki and Pete Hershelman. At least that's how it got locally where I'm at. It might have been different for other people in different areas of LTD, around the U.S. But where I'm at, Midwest area, Iowa, Kansas City, Nebraska, that's where it was. That's how it was. And so this vetting process, I mentioned this because it's important to understand it, because, and I might do a whole episode on what the vetting process looks like, just so that people can understand, or at least to be aware of, in case if anyone ever gets recruited by an Amway person, they know what this vetting process looks like. But I'll do a brief explanation. So the old process, the old way of how to get someone into Amway, when I first got started, was show the plan, tell them what it is. It's Amway. Don't say anything about LTD, the tools business, just yet, until like their first conference or so. And then if they get launched, then lay down expectations. But do it after they get launched. Do it after they get signed up. That's how that worked. And then this new process is different. This one, we don't share that's Amway. So the first meeting that we sit down with the prospect, the very first meeting, it's a meeting just to get to know them and have them share their story to you. And you ask some questions. I'll dive deep into this more in a different episode, but you ask some questions just to see, are they process oriented, or are they outcome focused, where do they have to love what they're doing, or like, are they more focused on the outcome and don't really care what it takes to achieve an outcome? Stuff like that. Would you shove up horse manure if you knew that you were gonna, reach this goal that you always wanted? Or would you not pursue it because you're shoving horse manure, which is like a very tedious task? Stuff like that. It's just, but I'll dive deep into this more in a different episode. But meeting one, you get to know them. They call it meet and greet one. And then there's meet and greet two, meet and greet one, you ask some questions, get to know them, and then you give them a book. And like I said, this evolved as time went on. So I wanted to do a separate episode of this, but the meeting that we did with my first prospect, we gave them the book, The Business of the 21st Century. But this would change as time goes on with this process. But anyway, meet and greet one, you give them a book. A book, either Business of the 21st Century or just some mindset book, whatever. Have them read it, agree on a time for them to get finished with the reading, and then it's meet and greet two. This one you don't say it's Amway yet. You just kind of draw circles and show how you make money without sharing that it's Amway. And you use kind of examples like the franchise model, like McDonald's, for example, and how they make money. And you try and use that as an example and draw circles that way and kind of keep it vague. As they would say it, you're looking at you're getting a view of the business from standing on a rooftop looking down, versus like you're seeing it from an angle from a rooftop down, versus being on the ground seeing the whole picture, if that makes sense. And then meet and greet two, and then there's info session one. That's the very first board plan that I explained in my last episode, that takes place weekly, once a week. That's the very first board plan that they go to, right? And that's where they found that it's Amway. And in this one, they changed it where in the board plan, they will now mention LTD and Amway in position 1. And then after that, there's a follow-up one. And during this time, you're giving them like either an audio or a book. You can use the DOIS app and have them get an audio through that app and stuff like that too. Then there's a follow-up one where you can like go over questions that they have and stuff like that. They'll draw some things out again, and then there's meeting 2 or for session 2 where they go to another board plan, and then there's follow-up 2. And then there's a budget session to see if you can fund your business and transfer what you spend now to your Amway site, and also buy or also purchase the LTD subscription bundle. And then if you make it that far, they'll tell you to go home, sleep on it, and we'll offer you a partnership and whatever. That's how it is. So it's meet and greet 1, meet and greet 2, in position 1, follow-up 1, in position 2, follow-up 2, budget session, launch. And this would evolve and grow as time went on. But I'll dive deep into that later on. But basically, it went from an old process of where sign up first, don't say it's Amway just yet, sign up first, immediately say it's Amway, don't mention LTD, and then lay down expectations after they get launched and signed up. Now with this new process, it's don't say it's Amway, don't say it's LTD, keep it vague, keep it all about mindset and see what their mindset is at first, and then eventually mention Amway, mention LTD, all through this new interview process. And then if we find that they're a good fit, then we launch them. But expectations were already laid out throughout that whole interview process. And so that's what's different about it. But I'll try to make this more sense in a different episode of the new vetting process. But yeah, so this is what happened in my first few months where we switched how we recruit people, basically. So I go to my back to story. I go to my summit 2016, and then I'm still in this honeymoon phase throughout the rest of 2016. And then and then I go to my second semester, and this is 2017 at this point, the beginning of 2017. And then towards the end of my second semester of college, it's suggested for me to, instead of going back home for the summer like I would always do, back home to Ames, Iowa, they wanted me to actually be in Cedar Falls, Iowa, that summer of 2017 after school would end for the semester, because at that local info session meeting that I would go to in Waterloo, Iowa, they didn't want me and others to leave, just because it would make that meeting smaller during the summertime. And so to help that meeting still flourish and to help grow it, they were pressuring me, my upline, to stay in Cedar Falls, Iowa, so I could go to this meeting every week. And mind you, I didn't have a car at that time. I was in that season in life. At this point, I was 20 years old. But they wanted me to be there, and my gut said this wasn't a good idea to do that. But I just trusted them, because I would always be told throughout the business that your upline will never steer you wrong. They have your best interest in mind. So I just trusted them. It didn't really make sense because, like, some of my cross line were going back to their home cities that, were the ones that, I was going to school with, the ones that, the 5 of us that were going to school. Some of them stayed, but some of them were going back home. But they wanted me specifically to stay there during that summertime. It didn't make sense. But they would later on say that it was because, I was, actually more active. I was talking to more people and contacting more people. And so because of that, there was more pressure on me to stay in Cedar Falls, Iowa, versus other people to not stay there and just go back to their home cities after the semester's done. But it didn't make sense. It was a dumb reason looking back at it, but back then it made sense to me. But whatever. But my gut instinct was telling me no, and eventually I will learn that, you're better off going off with your gut versus what others suggest. But like I said, back then I didn't know that. So I just blindly followed what they said, trusted them, and I did my best to stay in Cedar Falls, Iowa. And like I said, I didn't really have any experience living on my own or what to do. I didn't get out much. So, I mean, now I know how to live on my own, but back then I didn't. So it was different. So basically what happened was that summer, once the semester ended, when that semester ended, it's kind of tough for me to say, but yeah, summer of 2017. I didn't really have a place lined up just yet. I think I had to wait, 2 weeks. It's like middle of June to move into an apartment locally there on campus in Cedar Falls, Iowa. And so I didn't really have a place to stay at, and they wanted me to be there, right? So I was staying at my friend's house that lived close to Cedar Falls, Iowa. A friend from college, a female friend, and I was there for about 2 weeks, and then eventually I moved to my apartment that I had rented out for that summer. And I had a good plan. I was going to work for a job called the Target Distribution Center locally there and make money there to pay off rent. And then during this time, I actually got a car because it was kind of crunch time. I needed to figure out a way to stay in Cedar Falls, Iowa, and I was pressured to stay there. So I quickly found a car to purchase, and I used a friend of mine. I won't say his name, but I used a friend of mine who was like a dad to me, and I'll explain him later. But I used a friend of mine as a co-signer for an 07 Malibu, my first car, and I got that very quickly just because I needed to get a car. So without thinking about it, I just got a car, payment plan, everything, and I would have done it on my own, but I didn't have enough credit history to get a car at that time, so I used him as a co-signer. So that's what it was. So I got a car quickly then, and then got that apartment, and then I got the job for a Target Distribution Center, and then the hours, my upline didn't approve of that. My upline was saying, because the hours were, I believe it was 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. And those weren't good business building hours to go and build my business, because they'd always say business is built nights and weekends. So it's better to get a job first shift during the day so you can have time at night in the afternoon to meet people and recruit versus, my schedule, which is 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. I think it was Monday to Thursday, something like that, or Tuesday to Friday, something like that, but that's what it was. So, because of that, they encouraged me not to do that, and so then I was hired for that job. I never actually showed up day one. I think it was the day before day one, my first day at my job. I decided not to show up for work just because my employer did not approve of those hours, and I tried asking to change those hours, but there weren't any other hours available to change at the Target distribution center. So I actually just didn't show up. So essentially I quit, and then after that it was tough for me to find a job, and rent was coming up, and the apartment that I had was just like a 2 to 3 month apartment just for the summer, and the landlord of that apartment was very kind, lenient. Basically, I never paid for rent at all, I don't think. Not that I remember it at all. But she would allow me to stay there, so I kept pushing when I would pay for it, pushing the dates back, and she was lenient on it, but I never ended up paying for it, because I had trouble finding a job. I had trouble for a little while, and then eventually it got to the point where I did get a job, and it was like, cause like I said, I didn't have much experience in life, so I didn't really know how to find, good, decent paying jobs full time, just like that. So, the best I could think of, my 20-year-old self was to get a job at Wendy's part-time, early morning, and then work overnight part-time at a local grocery store called Hy-Vee. So that's what I did. I think it was, from what I remembered, it was like 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Wendy's, and then I think I was like 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. at my Hy-Vee, where I would just stock stuff and be like an overnight stalker. So that was my summer, and I wasn't making much money out of that, and I wasn't able to both pay my LTD business or both pay my LTD subscription and pay my Amway business, and then during this time as well, where I'm struggling to pay off rent and having a good job to pay money, my upline is asking me, why am I going to school? Because he could tell that I wasn't really passionate about school, because I was in an environment, that Amway environment, where it was teaching me that, college is a scam, school is a scam. You go to school, get in debt, and then you don't make much money afterwards. That kind of a deal. And you might not even get a guarantee to retire. That kind of a deal. So, because of all that, I decided to quit college. It was my decision, but I was manipulated, where I was in an environment where I was taught that college is a scam, school is a scam. So that summer I decided not to go back to school that following fall. of 2017, and then things took a turn for the worst. At the end of that summer, I didn't pay off any of the rent that I kept trying to push back the due date for rent to my landlord, and it got to the point where after my date where I was supposed to move out, I actually snuck in. It's like I was supposed to move out at a certain date at the end of July or whatever, but after that date when I was supposed to move out, I got my stuff out, I went back in, and I actually slept in that apartment because the door was still open. I just wanted to check if it was open, and it was still open, and I still slept there just because I didn't have anywhere to stay at the time. And my landlord woke me up that morning saying, "Get out." And I was like, crap. I didn't get arrested or anything like that, but she just let me go. And in my mind, I felt bad about it. I thought that, one day I'll pay her back in tenfold when I get rich off of Amway. That was kind of my justification of that, but I felt bad. And then the next few months following that fall of 2017, I'm not in school, and I'm homeless because, I'm still supposed to stay there in Cedar Falls, Iowa, and be there for those in-person meetings. And then I dropped out of college, and so I was homeless, still attending meetings every week at my local in-position there in Waterloo, Iowa. And I went to homeless shelter because that was the best that I can think of, and I stayed there. This is tough for me to say, but I stayed there for I think a good 3 months or so. It was like the end of July up till October. I was staying in a homeless shelter. And a lot happened during that summer. My friend that was a co-signer of my Malibu, he was like a dad to me. Him and another guy, all three of us would work out together, and those two guys were like my dads because they taught me when I was in high school how to, lift weights, and how to work out consistently, and how to train properly. And so they were like my dads to me, and we were very, very close. And they knew I was doing Amway at that time, for the last year and a half at that point. And when I shared with one of them that I'm dropping out of school, the one that co-signed my car, he flipped out, and he even threatened to take my car away from me and take his name off the car as a co-signer if I didn't go back to school. And my upline would suggest to me that he can't do that because it's already signed, and he already signed as a co-signer, and you already signed it as well, so you can't go back on that. So and as long as you make the payments, which I was doing with making the payments, they can't take my car away from me. So but he threatened to do that anyway, and then gets a little more deeper than that. But he starts sending me PDF articles and stuff like that too about Amway, and trying to warn me. And at this point in time, I was biased because, at this point I was taught by Amway and LTD that the internet is the bathroom wall society where everyone has an agenda on the internet, and if it's negative about Amway and LTD, it's probably someone that's living with their mom, a loser, or someone that's trying to sell their own network marketing company, whatever. So I was biased to see anything else different than that. And so when my best friend was trying to share this information with me, what he was finding, I just saw it as negative and just him trying to steal my dream, quote unquote. Stuff that I would hear when I was in the business. So there was one time where my friend called me and said, your mom is concerned, I'm concerned. Doesn't that give you a pause? And like, and then he asks, like, why do you think we're all saying this to you? And then I reply, because you're average. And he got really upset about that, and he hung up. But this is just all because I was taught that if you go the traditional route, go to school, get a job, whatever, get in debt, you're average. So I just blurted out to my best friend what I was just hearing and regurgitating over and over and over again. And it hurt his feelings. And then he kept sending me more information, and then I threatened him, stop saying this information to me because it's negative, and I don't want to see this negativity, because we were taught that you just don't want to be around negative thinkers, people that are trying to steal your dream. And that's what I felt like. And so I threatened him to stop, and I asked him to stop nicely, but he didn't. And so then I got so mad, and I decided to cut him off and block his number and tell him that I'm not going to speak to you again until I succeed in this thing in Amway. And then his last text to me was, "The devil got to you." So this all happened in the summer of 2017. I lost my two best friends, my dads, that I looked up to because of this business. And then I dropped out 2017. And, it's all, and then I got homeless in 2017 because it all started with me getting pressured to stay in Cedar Falls, Iowa during that summer of 2017, and then having to get a car real fast so I can get around, in that area, and then getting a job, but then them not approving of my job in terms of the hours, and then having to then try and find another job, and then not making enough money to not only pay off rent, but then also pay off my Amway business and the LTD tools subscription. So all that combined, I lose my friends, and I get a car payment, and then I don't make enough money, and I'm losing money at this point by trying to purchase Amway and purchase LTD, that I'm homeless by the end of the summer of 2017. And then we're moving into fall 2017, and where I'm at a homeless shelter, guess we'll stop right there. But yeah, that's where I'm at, and the story gets heavier from here as well. So, like I said, it's a 6-year journey. Right now, like I said, I'm a melancholy, as I mentioned before, so I'm very detailed, so I kind of know, everything that happened. So right now we are in roughly year number 1.5 specific. So almost 2 years in. We're in the fall 2017, and we got more to go as we move in my 6-year journey story of being an Amway LTD. Thanks for listening, and catch you next time.